The morning docket shuffles forward. Parking tickets, expired meters, the ordinary grind. Until a man in a dark green field jacket steps to the podium. He stands straight out of habit, not bravado. The set of his shoulders says order. His eyes say he's misplaced it. The clerk reads the name and the line beneath it. Michael Donovan, retired United States Marine. Judge Caprio scans the citation. Mr. Donovan, it appears you left your car in front of a fire hydrant. You know what that carries? Yes, sir. I do. I didn't see it. My wife was at the hospital. No protest in his tone, no bargaining. Only the kind of weariness people don't announce. Somewhere in the gallery a heel ticks across marble. The air unit breathes a steady, indifferent hum. A cough comes and goes like a small apology. A few heads tilt with the practiced skepticism of folks who've heard every story. Caprio watches him a moment longer. You're a veteran? Yes, sir. 22 years. 3 tours Iraq, 1 Afghanistan. The judge sets his pen down. The room recalibrates. And what brought you here today? Not the money, sir. Donovan's jaw works once, unclenches. I don't want anyone thinking I dodge responsibility. A small silence settles, denser than the fine on the page. His jacket is clean but faded, the cuffs polished smooth by time. The name patch is gone, but its rectangle of lighter fabric remains, as if he once wore a label he can't quite remove. Caprio nods, slow, measuring. The law sees a hydrant, Mr. Donovan. It doesn't see the reasons. I understand, sir. He lifts his eyes. They're steady, but there's weather behind them. I parked and ran. I told myself I'd be 20 minutes. The judge taps the folder closed without judgment. In the benches, someone shifts, then stills. The cool of the room presses against skin. Fluorescent light lays a flat sheen over everything but the man's voice, which carries a grain the paperwork can't capture. A parking ticket, by the book, is a straight line, sign, curb, fee. But the man at the podium isn't a straight line. He's a map creased, so often the routes are hard to follow. Service and return, duty and empty rooms. The words on the summons are small. The life behind them isn't. Caprio leans forward just enough to signal he's listening. We'll talk about what happened. For now, answer as you would under oath and as a man who keeps his word. Yes, sir. Donovan's hands rest on the edge of the stand. Scarred knuckles, neat nails. He doesn't tremble. He does brace, almost imperceptibly, the way people do when they expect impact. In the gallery, the last rustle fades. The air conditioner drones like distant surf. The marble carries back the tap of a latecomer's step, and then, mercifully, nothing. The judge's gaze is level, the veteran's is bare. The charge is small. The room can already feel it is about something large. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Caprio's voice softens, the way people speak when they're opening a door rather than closing one. Walk me through that morning, Mr. Donovan. I dropped the car at the curb and went in, he says. Cardiac surgery for my wife, Ellen. They'd told me to expect 4 hours. I told myself I'd be 20 minutes at most. I saw the red paint on the curb when I came back, not when I went in. He doesn't hurry. Each sentence lands like a boot placed carefully on uneven ground. Could you have contested the ticket? The judge asks. I don't argue with rules, sir, he replies. Where I come from, the rules keep people alive. I've seen what happens when they don't. A faint tremor shows in his fingers. Not fear, fatigue layered on duty. The overhead fixtures hum. Somewhere a bailiff's pin clicks once and stops. How long did you serve? 22 years, he says. Then I came home and didn't know where to stand. Work fizzled, the kids built lives 2 time zones away. Ellen, she's the place I go. No theatrics, no raised voice. The quiet is heavier than grief poured out would be. And the fine? Caprio asks. I meant to pay. He swallows. But there was a setback. Complications. They moved her to ICU. I slept in the parking lot a couple nights, just in case the phone rang and I was too far to reach. The words thin out. He clears his throat. I kept thinking, if I move the car now and something happens, and I miss it, I couldn't forgive that. Someone in the gallery shifts and then sits perfectly still. Skepticism loosens its grip. Caprio watches him, eyes warm, not pitying. You've been carrying this without asking for help. Donovan almost smiles and doesn't. Asking isn't what I'm trained for, sir. A beat. I figured the ticket could wait. I was wrong. The judge nods. He doesn't fill the silence. He lets it tell its own truth. The veteran squares his shoulders as if to accept a reprimand, but what comes instead is invitation. Mr. Donovan, Caprio says, you said you didn't see the hydrant. I believe that. But I also hear something else, that you've been trying to stand between your wife and the worst day of her life. Donovan's mouth tightens. If I could have taken the surgery for her, I would have. All I could do was be close enough to be useful. There it is, the hinge on which the room turns. This isn't a man gaming a system. It's a man who doesn't know how to set his burden down. The judge folds his hands. His voice is almost conversational. We'll deal with the citation. The law has its lines. But I need you to answer one more thing. Yes, sir. When you left the hospital and saw the slip under your wiper, what did you feel? He exhales, a sound that might be a laugh if it weren't so tired. Relief that she was still breathing. Then shame that I'd made a mess on the street outside while trying to keep order in my own house. The room absorbs it. The clock on the wall ticks. On the bench, a woman tightens her shawl and looks at the floor. A small case has opened onto a larger ledger, and everyone can read the entry now. Caprio flips through the thin file again, scanning the pages that tell almost nothing about the man standing before him. Mr. Donovan, he says, the record shows this isn't your first parking citation. You've got 2 previous ones, same neighborhood, same hydrant zone, both unpaid. The veteran lowers his eyes. Yes, sir. I remember. Or maybe I didn't, not right away. That was around the time Ellen first went under observation. I wasn't sleeping much. The judge looks up. You forgot. I lived in my car for a bit, Donovan says quietly. Not homeless exactly, just didn't want to be far. They'd moved her to a ward with no visiting hours. I stayed close enough that if they called, I could get there before the machine stopped. The gallery stills. The usual rhythm of petty hearings, laughs, sighs, impatience, fades into one collective breath. Caprio sets the file aside. You slept in your vehicle while your wife was in the hospital? Yes, sir. His voice is steady, almost too steady. I didn't see the point of going home to an empty chair. A pause long enough to feel heavy. He continues, his words careful, factual, the way soldiers report after action. I used to drive out near the waterfront at dawn. Sit there with coffee, wait for the sun. Tell myself I was still standing guard. The judge studies him. You know, the law doesn't measure grief. Only actions. Donovan nods. That's fair, sir. But grief doesn't measure laws either. Something in his tone, simple, unpolished, lands harder than any argument could. The judge leans back. You mentioned earlier that you'd seen what happens when order breaks down. Did anyone from Veterans Affairs ever reach out after you came home? He gives a small shake of the head. A brochure, a phone number. I called once. Spoke to a recording. A faint smile ghosts across his face. After a while, you stop trying to explain what can't be explained. Caprio doesn't interrupt. The man continues, quietly unraveling the part of his life no citation could capture. I thought I was tougher than most. You tell yourself you've earned calm after everything. But you get back, and the world's moved on. The people you served with scatter. The uniform's in a box. And then one day your wife can't breathe right, and suddenly you're standing outside a hospital wondering what you're still built for. His words fall like small stones into deep water. I tried to keep everything in order, her meds, the bills, the schedules. But every night felt like waiting for a call I didn't want to answer. Those tickets, he gestures toward the folder. They were noise. Background static. The kind that only sounds loud when everything else goes quiet. Caprio's expression softens, but his tone remains formal. The system doesn't know what to do with men like you, Mr. Donovan. It reads numbers, not stories. Donovan nods once. That's all right. I didn't come here for sympathy, just to make things right. The judge looks down at the line item. Violation, hydrant obstruction, $100 fine. It feels absurdly small next to what he's heard. Mr. Donovan, he says finally, when you say you didn't want people to think you avoid responsibility, I believe you. But responsibility doesn't mean you have to carry every weight alone. The man hesitates, as though the words don't quite fit into his vocabulary. I'm still learning that, sir. The room is silent again. Only the low hum of the lights, the faint shuffle of someone wiping their eyes. Caprio glances toward the audience, then back to the veteran. There's nothing in this file about what kind of man you are, but I can see it from here. Donovan straightens, the reflex of a salute half-formed before he stops himself. Thank you, sir. The judge folds the file closed, resting his hand on it for a moment as if grounding the weight of both their worlds. In that stillness, the courtroom seems smaller, almost intimate. No longer law against man, but two lives recognizing each other through the paper that pretends to define them. Then Caprio speaks, quiet but firm. Let's see what we can do about the rest of those tickets. It's not mercy, it's acknowledgement, and in this room, that means more. Caprio leans forward, elbows resting lightly on the bench. His tone is calm, but there's a weight behind it, the kind that comes from carrying other people's pain for too many years. Mr. Donovan, he says quietly, you're a Marine. You know discipline isn't just about how you act, it's about accepting the consequences. But I also know where leaves marks no one can see. For a long moment, the veteran doesn't move. Then he nods slowly, as though each word costs him something. You're right, sir. I've spent my life holding the line. That's what we did. We held. Then one day, the line gave way. I couldn't even get out of bed. His voice falters, not from weakness, but from honesty finally allowed to breathe. The people in the gallery lean forward, sensing the fragile edge of a confession no one expected. I thought it was just exhaustion, he continues. A few bad nights. But it wasn't. It was something crawling into my head and refusing to leave. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning because a door slammed somewhere, and I'd already be reaching for a weapon I didn't have anymore. He stops, exhales slowly. One night, I woke up in the kitchen with a knife in my hand. I don't remember picking it up. Ellen was standing there, crying. That's when I knew something was wrong with me. Caprio doesn't interrupt. He just listens, giving the man enough silence to fill with truth. I never got help, Donovan says, voice low. Didn't think I needed it. Didn't think I deserved it. You see, in my unit, there was a guy who broke down once. They sent him home. Everyone called him weak. I promised myself I'd never be that man. The air in the courtroom is heavy enough to touch. Even the clock seems to hold its breath. You didn't want to be a burden, Caprio says softly. I didn't want to be a story people whispered about, Donovan answers. I wanted to stay invisible. I figured that was safer. The judge studies him, a man carved out of duty, now realizing that the same armor that kept him alive is what's been crushing him. You know, Caprio says, you're not standing here because of a parking ticket anymore. You're standing here because, for the first time, you're letting yourself say what you've been afraid to admit. Donovan's hands tighten on the podium, knuckles white. His eyes glisten, but he doesn't look away. I'm not afraid of the fine, sir, he says finally. I'm afraid of being alone. That's the thing no one tells you about coming home. You survive the war, but the silence afterward, it's louder. The judge sits back, absorbing it. The room feels smaller now, like the walls have moved closer just to listen. Caprio's voice lowers to a near whisper. You've fought for your country. Now you're fighting for yourself. That's not weakness. That's courage of a different kind. Donovan's gaze flickers, defiance, then gratitude, then something rawer. I don't know how to start, he admits. You just did, Caprio replies. The veteran lets out a breath he's been holding for years. His shoulders drop, the first visible surrender, not to guilt, but to truth. Caprio nods once, respectfully. You've spent decades trying to protect others from danger, Mr. Donovan. Maybe it's time someone protected you from your own ghosts. Donovan looks up, eyes red but clear. It's strange, sir. I thought standing here would feel like punishment. But it doesn't. It feels like permission. To what? The judge asks gently. To stop pretending I'm fine. A stillness follows, real, human, unbroken by procedure or rule. It's not the silence of a courtroom anymore. It's the silence of understanding. Caprio leans back, voice softer now. Then let's make this hearing worth something. The law can wait. Right now, you just told the hardest truth a man can tell. That matters more than any verdict. Donovan nods, slow and deliberate, the motion of a man finally laying down his armor. For the first time since he walked into the room, he looks lighter, not redeemed, but released. Caprio lets the silence fade before turning to the bailiff. Call the officer who issued the citation. A uniformed man steps forward, younger than Donovan, the kind of calm that comes from learning to hide discomfort behind posture. His badge catches the light as he stands before the bench. Officer, Caprio begins. You remember this incident? Yes, Your Honor. the officer says. It was early morning, outside St. Mary's Hospital. The car was blocking a hydrant. I approached it and saw the gentleman inside. He looked drained. Not drunk or angry, just far away. Like he was watching something the rest of us couldn't see. Caprio nods. And he didn't argue? No, sir. I explained the violation, handed him the citation. He said, "Thank you, officer," got out, and walked away. I remember thinking, he didn't even care. But not in the careless way. More like someone who'd already lost too much to be bothered by one more thing. Donovan sits motionless, his jaw tightening as though hearing his own reflection described aloud. Caprio's voice softens. You didn't recognize him then? The officer shakes his head. No, sir. Not until weeks later. There was a funeral at the Veterans Cemetery. Rain was coming down hard. I saw him standing at a distance. No umbrella, no people near him. Just standing, still as stone. I realized then it was the same man. I didn't approach him. It didn't feel right to interrupt whatever he was holding inside. A hush settles over the courtroom again. Even the fluorescent hum seems to quiet. Caprio exhales slowly. You said you saw him at his wife's funeral? Yes, Your Honor. I found out later from the hospital staff. She'd passed away a few days after I issued the ticket. The judge looks toward Donovan, who stares at the floor, every line in his face carved with the memory of that rain. Caprio's tone changes, lower, more deliberate. Mr. Donovan, you didn't argue that morning because you'd already accepted the worst verdict life could give. The veteran's voice comes barely above a whisper. Yes, sir. I thought there wasn't anything left to fight for. The officer shifts slightly, the stiffness in his stance dissolving. Your Honor, if I'd known, if any of us had known, I would have paid that fine myself. Caprio raises a hand gently. You did your job, officer. And you did it well. But now we're doing mine. He looks back at the veteran. Mr. Donovan, I contacted the local Veterans Council this morning. They confirmed what I suspected. You've never applied for any benefits. No assistance, no housing, no therapy. Not once. Donovan meets his gaze, bewildered. Didn't seem right to ask. Others have it worse. Caprio shakes his head. You've carried this country longer than most could bear. You don't need to earn peace. You've already earned it. For the first time, the Marine's composure fractures. He wipes his face quickly, as if trying to hide tears that refuse to stop. I don't remember the last time someone said that to me, sir. The officer beside him turns away, pretending to adjust his belt. A woman in the back row presses a tissue to her eyes. The court reporter's fingers pause above her keys, motionless. Caprio doesn't fill the silence. He lets the room breathe around it. When he finally speaks, it's almost in a whisper. You thought the law existed to punish you. But today, maybe it's reminding you that justice still has a heart. Donovan nods faintly, voice breaking. I didn't know that was possible. It is, Caprio replies. And it's why we're here. He leans back, hands folded on the bench. Mr. Donovan, you have nothing to prove anymore. You've fought enough battles. Let this one end with mercy. Donovan bows his head, a single tear tracing the edge of his jaw. Yes, sir, he says. Thank you. Around them, the courtroom stays utterly still. It feels less like a legal proceeding and more like a moment of absolution, the kind no document could ever record. The next morning, the courtroom feels different, lighter, as if the weight left hanging in the air yesterday has quietly dispersed. Sunlight filters through the high windows, painting long gold stripes across the worn benches. Michael Donovan stands once more at the podium, his posture still straight, but his eyes softer, as though something inside him has unclenched. Judge Caprio enters and settles behind the bench. He glances at the veteran, then at the officer, then at the spectators who have returned. Familiar faces now, drawn by the story they can't forget. When he speaks, his tone carries both authority and warmth. Mr. Donovan, he begins, this court has reviewed your case. The fine is $100, but the amount doesn't matter anymore. What matters is what we've all witnessed here. He pauses. The court hereby dismisses your fine. Not because of your service, though that alone deserves gratitude, but because no punishment could possibly make this situation more just than your honesty already has. Donovan blinks, unsure if he's heard correctly. Dismissed, sir? Yes. Caprio says, leaning forward slightly. But there's one condition. Instead of paying the city, you'll give your time. Spend a day at the local Veterans Center, talk to the young ones. Tell them what you told us. Not as a hero. As a man who finally learned that asking for help doesn't mean you've fallen. It means you're still standing. Donovan nods slowly, his voice rough but steady. Yes, sir. I'd be honored. The judge smiles faintly. I thought you might say that. He opens a folder and pulls out a single yellowed sheet. This was found in an old Marine Corps archive last night. It's a commendation letter from your unit, signed by your commanding officer. He called you the calmest man in a storm. I think he had you figured out long before this court did. The veteran's breath catches. He takes the paper carefully, like it's something fragile, and for the first time, his shoulders shake, not from strain, but release. Thank you, he whispers, for seeing me. The officer who wrote the ticket gives a small nod. You've earned more than any of us, sir. A few people in the gallery begin to clap softly, hesitant at first, then together, gentle, respectful applause that fills the room without breaking its quiet dignity. Caprio lets it linger for a moment, then raises a hand. Justice, Mr. Donovan, isn't about penalties. It's about balance, reminding us that the law exists not only to correct, but to care. He stands, his robe catching the light. You carried this nation on your back for decades. Today, let us carry you for a change. Donovan lifts his head, eyes red but unclouded. He gives a small, precise nod, the kind that once meant mission understood. As he leaves the courtroom, he pauses by the door. Outside, the morning sun spills across the city, bright and ordinary. He steps into it slowly, breathing deep, the warmth catching on his face. For the first time in years, Michael Donovan isn't bracing against the world. He's simply standing in it, still, silent, alive. And somewhere behind him, the judge's final words echo softly in the room. The law doesn't punish. It reminds us who we are.